Thank you to my channel members and Ko-fi supporters that make these videos possible. You can also support me by buying a deck tech on my weekly Tuesday and Sunday streams. More info in the video description. Hello everyone! Since the first deck review video did so well, I figured I'd run it back here with another 3 viewer decks that caught my eye. You'll definitely be seeing a lot more of these in future, though maybe not right away, as I do have a new deck of my own that I'm going to be showing off here eventually. Regardless, we have 3 exciting decks today that I'm excited to cover. The video is timestamped in case you want to hop to one in particular, but we'll just go ahead and start with Osgir the Reconstrctor, sent in by Ban, which has a lot of words on it, but the ones that are important is that he brings back artifacts from the graveyard and makes it double, and he's also a sacrifice outlet for artifacts. Ban's main issue here was that his deck felt like it lacked explosiveness that he normally enjoys in his lists, and that it also had an issue with closing out games. He's not keen on Universes Beyond cards, so we'll be avoiding those this time around, as well as a more common restriction of not including any card that is too expensive in particular. First, let's talk about cuts. When it comes to explosiveness, the things that are the most suspect here are Spine of Ishtar, Hellkite Tyrant, Scrap Welder, and Ugin. This isn't to say that these can't be good cards, but for what it sounds like you want to do, these clunky large mana plays aren't really what you're looking for. And yes, Ugin is very good with artifacts in Mystic Forge, but ultimately Osgir isn't a commander that can use that type of line efficiently or reliably. The other cards that gave me pause are Sun Titan and Savine's Reclamation. When I generally think about explosive plays, I'm not typically thinking about looping baubles. I have great replacements for these ones though, so don't worry. Lastly, though I am suspicious of the Audacious Reshapers, I can respect some gambling, and so we'll leave it be. This deck is mostly already there, I feel, but there's a few additions that can really push it over the top and give it what it lacks for you. First being Reckless Handling, which is probably just as good as a second copy of Gamble in this deck, which you already run. Next is a package of cards I was surprised not to see in the deck despite the insane tempo they create in artifact strategies, that being the new Aetherdrift Duretti and Trash for Treasure. With these additions, I'll also recommend adding Arena of Glory over a Plains as well, which not only gives the newly added Duretti haste, but can also be used with Osgir to activate him the same turn as played. You already run the Urza's Cave that can tutor for it as well. Now that Osgir haste line is a ton of mana, which you can luckily already support thanks to a lot of your busted artifact ramp. But is it any wonder why I'm still going to recommend the GOAT of explosive plays, Mana Geyser, anyway? Steel Seraph is another banger creature that can help swing life totals thanks to lifelink, or give an otherwise stationary Wormcoil engine flying or vigilance so it can get past blockers or be a blocker despite attacking. Now with this big early game plan of copying cheap artifacts and late game plan of making big idiots, it's probably not too surprising that I'm going to dedicate this last slot to Thousand Moon Smithy, which makes a gnome that sizes up equal to the number of artifacts you control, but then it flips into a land that makes more of those gnomes if you use it to cast artifact spells. For some final 1-for-1 swaps, I think this is a deck where Greaves clears Swiftfoot Boots easily, since Equip 0 versus 1 is going to come up super often. During this time, I also got to thinking recently about how well Brass's Tunnel Grinder has served me in a few decks, and when I look at that Scrap Mastery in the list, I just can't help but feel that you need to try it out here, probably just in place of a big score. My final swap is an easy one. Cut another Plains for Legion Leadership, which can help make a big flyer like Triplicate Titan jump scare someone with double damage or quadruple damage when it's paired with Boros Charm. In the end, we cut a lot of the slower, dirtier cards for a more aggressive artifact token aggro and artifact reanimator package, which should help the list feel a bit more explosive at the low cost of $25 whole for the upgrades. Thanks for submitting your deck. Next up is Mimeoplasm Revered One, sent in by Attacking Zach. He wants to do Voltron with the Mimeoplasm and is seeking to do it in a strange way, specifically with a cycling theme to get 21+1/+1 counters on the ooze to one-shot opponents. There were multiple issues I could hear in the primer from Zach though. Mostly that the deck is incredibly interaction light, and I quote, a glass cannon, and the early game is spent ramping and playing small bean, which is 2 inconsolable ideas as many people, myself included, will be running anyone over that puts a growth spiral on the stack for the rest of time. As far as restrictions, the only thing he's got on us is a $20 budget. So there's a few things that stand out to me that make your deck a glass cannon when it really doesn't have to be. That being 2 little lands, a ton of dead top decks, and a ton of below rate cards. I'm going to start with the cuts as always, starting with these below rate cards. Drownyard Lurker, Terror of Trawashi, Gemrazor, Fog, Hazapal, and Lol, Rescue from the Underworld, The Eldest Reborn, The Cruelty of Gix, Crystal Carapace, Quest for the Necropolis, Ever After, Endless Obedience, Path of the Schemer, Beacon of Unrest, and Edge of Autumn. Your deck has this strange fascination with single target reanimation here that I cut back on because it doesn't really work well with your commander at all, and the scariest thing you're bringing back often are threats that are not suited to be menacing in commander, like Scion of Darkness or Archfiend of Ifnir. I know you have a ton of land cycling, but I'm going to start by adding a little more consistency in the form of Malevolent Rumble and Satyr Wayfinder. Ruin Crab will also be joining the mill party alongside ramp spells Farseek, Growth Spiral, Planar Genesis, and Secure Tribe Elder. I'm going to give you an Omen Hawker, which can be used to activate the Mimeoplasm's ability easier, as well as pay for cycling costs, and a Muddle the Mixture, which will be a second copy of your all-too-important Fluctuator in addition to being a counterspell. We're over halfway through the additions and only have spent $5 on our $20 budget, so let's add some real heavy hitters to this list. That being Invisible Stalker, which is a brutal target for the Mimeoplasm to copy, Buried Alive, Aftermath Analyst, and Golgari Grave Troll. Wait, that's still only $12. So I suppose I'll offer up Stubborn Denial, an actual factual counterspell to round up the deck. After playtesting the deck with these changes, I still found it floundering, mainly due to the fact that there's so little ramp. So I'm going to recommend cutting Virtue of Persistence, Command the Dreadhorde, Bannerhide Krushak, and Horror of the Broken Lands for Songs of the Damned, White of the Reliquary, Cultivate, and Koldama's Reach. By cutting Stubborn Denial for a negate, we're back under budget here with the upgrades costing exactly $9.80. For that price, we've gone from a deck that would often gas out into an unstable Reanimator plan and would tread water with fog effects to one that is actively ramping to win the game and can actively brawl nicely in a bracket 2 game due to the vast quantities of mill and ramp. If you're still getting beat down by wider, scarier boards, I highly recommend getting your hands on a Spike Weaver as a creature that the Mimeoplasm can use to fog out the table. This is definitely not how I would have built the Mimeoplasm, but I'm happy to see a weird angle on it that you enjoy. Thanks for submitting your deck. Lastly, we have Aphelia Viper Whisperer, sent in by Reyna. This is her first ever commander deck, and she feels like it's not running well in any regard. She also gave us very little restriction when upgrading the deck, asking mainly for it to be between brackets 2 and 3. Well, Reyna, you don't get to be between brackets. That kind of defeats most of the point of the system, but I'm happy to upgrade your deck, especially since it's called I'm Trying. Oh, poor thing. Okay, we all see it. Lich's Caress will be my first cut from this deck. This effect is not worth 5 mana. Hero's Downfall will join it in my estimations, as will Urborg Justice, which is only useful when you're ahead. Here's a fun thing about Death Touch on your attack trigger commander. You don't need Silver Shroud costume to protect it since no one wants to block it. And if they do, you can just recast her. Thieves' Tools, Trailblazer's Boots, and Whisper's Silk Cloak will be going for a very similar reason. Only 14 creatures are reduced and trigger Ronus' Monument, and Vanquisher's Banner might be good in red or mono green where its cost doesn't matter that much or card advantage is desperate, but here in Golgari, we don't need 5 mana to touch cardboard. Patchwork Banner's cute, but ultimately not what the deck wants in my estimation, thanks to the life total reducing. I can appreciate the Wound Reflection, by the way, but I do think it's far and away the worst option for this list. Doubling Season is a trap. You start getting your value back from it way too late in the game, and the same goes for Peril of Lives. Phyrexian Arena, the Vraskas should also go too, sadly. And my final cut will be Gift of the Viper. That gives us 17 slots to work with, so let's give this a try. Firstly, Overruns. Overruns are critical to this deck's success because of how it works with Death Touch, allowing you to assign 1 damage to any blockers and punch the rest through. Because of this, I'll be recommending Thunderfoot Baloth, Pathbreaker Ibex, and Glorious Sunrise. A couple of these might seem strange, but I generally think these are some of the best options because they let you get the Overrun effect passively, which lets you have the mana to activate Aphelia later. Bloodletter of Aclazotz is a shoo-in for this deck over Wound Reflection, but due to its pretty large price tag, I'll offer up Warlock class, which has a lower ceiling but a much higher floor than the Wound Reflection, since we only care about this life loss on our turn. Next up, of course, is Skullclamp. This deck makes a ton of 1/1s, and it's easy to see how this will go crazy here. Harvest Season is a card that interests me for your deck, because I feel like you'll have a lot of good attacks where the defender will not block you, and then you'll profit a ton of lands. In this same vein, Enduring Vitality will let you tap your snakes for mana. This mana talk also brings me into what an interesting prospect White of the Reliquary is for token decks like this. With tokens as well, I feel it's important to mention how good Chord of Calling is. With it, you can just pass your turn, And with a wide enough board, you can grab the Thunderfoot Baloth you need to close out the game with Aphelia activation on that next turn. My last 8 additions will be focusing entirely on interaction and protection. Blessed Respite makes for good graveyard hate, as well as being a good card to loop with the Shigeki I'm going to be adding. Uvenwald Tracker is a fun card to have with Death Touch tokens. Bitter Triumph is a quick and easy answer to any creature or planeswalker, as is Assassin's Trophy. Hapatra is also a wicked play against any deck with a lot of weenies, in addition to just being a good backup snake generator. She is also mean with Persistent Constrictor. Chthonian Nightmare is a great card to use in order to turn a token into most of the useful creatures in your deck since it has such a low curve. One of the last 2 cards will be pricey, but I feel necessary, which is the inclusion of Heroic Intervention. But if you want to substitute it with a Wrap and Vigor, you may do so. And I'm also going to be recommending a simple but effective Soul Shatter. Also, please don't run Myriad Landscape or Reliquary Tower in this low curve deck. These are certainly better as basics. Now then, we've gone from a deck that has a ton of pretty useless evasion equipment and large clunky mana plays that fit the flavor but not the goal, to a more consistent, explosive, and deadly deck that can use these snakes to bleed out opponents incredibly quick. I'm honestly a bit jealous of your deck now. Thanks for sending it in. And with that, let me know down in the comments below what you would have changed or added to these decks. Did it give you any useful ideas for your lists? If you're jealous of the folks in this video, don't forget I go live on stream every Tuesday and Sunday on Twitch and offer 6 slots instead of 3 for each of those streams. Thanks for watching, and until next time, bye!